Hi folks, this is Jamie from Randomise User with the top 10 indie games of 2018. When all is said and done, 2018 will mostly be remembered for bad reasons, and massive cows, but indie games have had a great year. That includes many that finally left early access to great acclaim, and there's a few in this countdown. To qualify for this list, all games here must have been fully released on PC in 2018, and nothing that's still in early access, which does rule out a couple of channel favourites. So let's get on with it. Once I've shoehorned in a quick reference to my Patreon, where you can support our coverage of the best indie games all year round from just $1 a month. Number 10. Minute. This sounded like a gimmick best suited to a game jam. You only live for 60 seconds, after which you die and respawn back at your base. But the way it turns this into a Metroidvania with lots to explore and puzzles to solve is a work of genius. It's an impeccably designed little game, from the characterful lo-fi graphics to the cunning way the map is put together. A world full of endless deserts, secret temples, marvellous machines and cheerful ghosts. It's also very funny and rarely frustrating. Even the endgame boss is fun, rather than a nasty difficulty spike. Just don't ask how many times I ran through that bloody temple labyrinth before I realised. Number 9. Subnautica. I don't want to rehash my video about the best games from the first half of the year, but everything I said there still stands, about how much I'm split on this game. It's great, it's fascinating, and just makes you go wow all the time. But yeah, it can also feel a bit grindy and slow. Luckily, once you adapt to the pace of underwater life and accept this isn't space, or an island or something, you can have a whale of a time. Yeah, I went there. To quote me, Subnautica's 1.0 release proved it had been refined and expanded into something more than a sandbox with a bloody great crash ship in it. If you kind of faded out during the long early access period, give it another go. Number 8. Wandersong. Wandersong is a burst of colour and cheer, with your bard solving puzzles using a cleverly designed singing mechanism. You select the notes to play from a colourful wheel, delivering your song like the operatic shopkeeper from Crypt of the Necrodancer. You glide through this fantasy world full of gentle puzzles, memory tests and hot platforming action, based around endless and funny variations on the song wheel idea, never resorting to tired old violence. Every new section charms anew, and nothing outstays its welcome. Much of the joy is in the writing, where everyone you meet is full of character and worth taking the time to read in full. Normally I skip dialogue like a bastard, but not here. Number 7. 2 Point Hospital. As much as I enjoyed Megaquarium and Parkosaurus, this is the building and management game that absorbed me the most, and possibly because the source inspiration, Theme Hospital, is such a great foundation. They haven't actually changed that much. The temptation to complicate it must have been great. Instead, it's making the idea of building your own hospital as best as it can be. The developers have examined every last detail to make it all fit together seamlessly. Everything feels balanced, and you feel like you have strategic freedom despite there being a set progression in each scenario. The animation is really bloody good, and even the jokes don't get old. Hopefully it's not the nostalgia getting to me, but this is the game I want to wallow in, to eat up the winter nights and suddenly find it's 3 AM. And that's only going to keep happening as they add new DLC. Number 6. The Colonists. Oh yeah, there was another nostalgia-influenced building game, wasn't there? And this one's inspired by The Settlers, and this is probably a more personal choice because the original game was one of my childhood favourites, along with Civilization and Bubble Bobble. This one is a full game, but it's still been worked on, especially the sandbox mode that wasn't available at launch, so things can only get better. Like 2 Point, this takes all that was good about the original game and expands on it, leaving a game that slides down like an oyster. Really, if you like designing efficient networks but still want a fun, funny, challenging time, well, here you go. I do have some criticisms, but it's the sort of game that fills me with too much happiness to worry about them. Number 5. Far Lone Sails. I still think about this one. It's a couple of hours long, but it's such a perfect 2 hours of indie, and I can still picture most of it in my head, not something I can say about most games. It's so well done that, even with long stretches of what you might call nothing, that nothing still feels important and interesting. This is mostly down to the sad, meditative atmosphere, tempered with a kind of nervous exhilaration that holds brilliantly to the end. Far Lone Sails offers some real wow moments as well, along with puzzles that don't frustrate, platforming that feels spot on, and a gentle lore that's portrayed with a light touch by the landscape rather than by info dump or cutscene. The ship itself, whose multiple functions you control all by yourself, is a thing of wonder, and I never want to leave it. Number 4. Bad North. I followed development of this one for ages, and knew it would be brilliant from the first GIFs I saw on social media. It didn't disappoint. It's always a good sign when strategy games are really simple on the surface, but go on to have endless strategic variations, and this is the perfect example of that. I also love how it's played in real time, albeit with bullet time to allow you to make your moves without you tripping over the controller. I do like the messiness of real time here, and because every encounter really feels like a battle, controlled chaos and improvisation, rather than reducing such killing fields to probabilities and formulas. It also gets that mood is important in strategy games, with a beautiful, pastel-y, washed-out feel to the island art, sparse but effective audio, and surprisingly characterful soldiers as you move them about. It's also tough, but then I played on hard, so, Number 3. Dead Cells. It's just really good. See, early access was perfect here. They've honed this roguelite platformer to perfection over the early access period. It has exactly the right amount of nagging need to keep playing it over and over, to unlock more stuff, to see more stuff, to really get to grips with the flow of the game. When the flow works, you never feel more powerful. There's a certain difficulty spike with the bosses, admittedly, but it doesn't take more than a couple of rematches before you see light at the end of the tunnel, so I'll allow this. Yeah, it's, well, really good. Number 2. RimWorld. Yeah, I love RimWorld, but even now it's finally out of early access, it still looks a little like a ugly work in progress. And despite that, it's still the best game of 2018. Almost. RimWorld is a game you can play for hundreds of hours without ever getting bored, and without the game needing to pad itself out with grinding and general fluff. This is pure game, with every part of it geared towards making memorable stories. It's a rare thing where the victory conditions are actually the least important part of the experience. It's often at its best when you're just trying to survive in new ways, against a fresh set of horrible conditions, not just coasting along building bedrooms. Honestly, I've never felt more attached and interested to pawns in a game, despite having no direct control over them. They're complex beings, and with the game being fully moddable, can be made even more so. Anyway, I could go on all day about this, but there's the whole awkward thing that there is a better game that came out in 2018. I mean, RainWorld only just came out on Switch, although apparently that doesn't count. And number 1, Into the Breach. I don't like turn-based strategy games. I like the idea of them, but in practice I find them boring, and likely to make me impatient and angry. Which brings us to turn-based strategy game Into the Breach, the best game of 2018. Here's what I said about the game last time. There's not an inch of fat in Into the Breach. Every battle lasts a few turns, and there's nothing here that reeks of being complex just for the sake of appearing cleverer than it is. You have 3 differently skilled mechs on your team, and a number of bugs who appear over the course of the battle. And that's it really. Simple rules, endless tactical variation. The game's visual language is brilliant. It shows you the potential result of every move you make with such clarity that it's no surprise that the devs admitted they took stuff out, simply because it would have been too confusing to explain visually. Into the Breach is one of the most perfectly designed games of all time. So, yep, this is my favourite game of the year, and next year will be Astroneer, just to spoil that surprise even longer in advance than I did with this one. Anyway, please consider supporting us, subscribe to Randomise User, and maybe give us a bit of cash on Patreon, which helps support us covering more of the best indie games around. It's really appreciated. And if you want to watch more Into the Breach gameplay from when I first played it, click the link on the end card. And if you're complaining that I didn't include Celeste, I forgot to play it. Bye!